All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Earn Your Runtime. Before we start off, I just want to say thank you to everyone who listened to the first episode. It was actually a lot more people than I thought there would be. But yeah, I don't know if just a lot of people watched Hamnet or were interested in that. But yeah, thank you so much to all the support on the first episode. Today, we're going to be talking about Fallout Season 2, which I was kind of iffy on if I was going to talk about it or not. I think the majority of the episodes will be about movies, most likely, just because it takes X amount of time for a season of a TV show to end. And I don't really want to be doing like episode 2, episode 3. I think I talked about that a little bit in the last episode. But basically, we're going to be talking about Fallout Season 2 today, my thoughts on it, and I guess just kind of overall, going to take a similar, I guess, blueprint from the first episode, and we'll talk about cinematography and all that good stuff. But anyways, first off, Fallout Season 2, it was I guess I'll start with my ratings, as per usual. I gave it a 9 out of 10. The first season I gave it 10 out of 10, so it dropped a point for me personally. This season they were definitely super into New Vegas. That was basically the whole idea behind the second season, was that they were going to be exploring this New Vegas lore and kind of getting into a little more of, I guess, the content that they have to explore in the Fallout franchise. So I think it started airing December of last year already. I can't believe it's been that long, but it ended February 4th of 2026. And man, this season was tough for me. I think my thoughts on the first season was it was basically a resounding 10. I thought it was really fun. There weren't really many filler episodes from what I recall. I guess it's been a while since I've seen it, but I really enjoyed season 1. I thought they did it very well. Got me invested in the characters and everything. But the start of season 2 felt, a little bit iffy. I know, I guess from public opinion standpoint, excuse me, a lot of people were, a bit more negative about this season. And on one hand, I think a lot of the negativity was basically just Fallout New Vegas fans kind of shitting on the show because they didn't do something right, or in their eyes right. And I think it's tough when you do shows like this because you have this huge fan base that's so invested in these specific storylines or these specific characters that it becomes really difficult to properly portray characters. So I think a lot of the hate was kind of, it shouldn't have, how do I say this? This is unfounded hate, like it comes from a place of just people very passionate about something and, perspectives, right? It's all very opinionated, but some of the criticisms definitely still stick. So I guess in this episode, I'll switch it up a little bit and I'll talk about what I didn't like first. There are a few things I didn't like about the season that I think wasn't done as well as the first season. I talk a lot about pacing. Sorry, just drinking some water. I talk a lot about pacing in terms of movies and TV shows. I think pacing is a huge part of any piece of entertainment, whether it's a song or a movie or a TV show or an advertisement. Pacing is such a huge part of story development, character development. This season, it kind of suffered a little bit. And it's unfortunate. It started off pretty, fast and hot, and it, got into everything very quickly. And then it just kind of dragged. Like episode 2 to 4 were pretty rough in terms of pacing. It really slowed down a lot. We did get more into the kind of military group that the Maximus character is in. I forget the name for some reason. I don't know why it's going past me, but the, elder cleric Quintus and that whole group and their eventual fight with the Commonwealth and things like that. But his arc this season was really shitty, in my opinion. Again, like I have things that I do like. I'm just starting off with things I don't like. The Maximus character's arc this season was pretty lackluster. It felt very kind of, oh, we have to have this storyline happen and explain why Maximus and the Lucy character end up in the same place, and we have to, it felt very much as just a story element that needed to be there for something else to happen. And I suppose if that was the whole point of that arc, it was done fine. Like, I don't know particularly what else I would have wanted, but something about it just felt kind of, I don't know, it lacked a depth. I just felt like there wasn't a point to it very much at the end of the day, aside from basically he has the cold fusion and he gives it to whoever. And it's just like, it felt like a very predictable story development that was just there as kind of a mechanic to help along the story, which again, I mean, look, you got to do it at some point, especially in TV shows. But in this case, it felt a little, I don't know, maybe they could have put a little more emphasis on certain things, made me a little more invested. But basically, Maximus, fucks it all up, starts killing people, takes cold fusion, and gives it to the Ghoul character, who then uses that as leverage to, I guess, negotiate with Mr. House. But before we get that far in, I do really like the flashback sequences with the Ghoul. I think they were done really well. They made me more invested in his arc, in his character. I think it's interesting the way that they tied the overseer girl, the blonde one. I'm bad with names, I'm sorry, but the blonde overseer lady with the one eye, I think it was interesting how they tied that in with Hank and how it was actually his wife. Again, sorry, spoilers if you haven't seen it, but it's been out long enough by now. What's her name? Stephanie. That's her name, Stephanie. Yeah, I thought that was fun how they tied that in with the flashback sequences. It did give a flashback a purpose. I feel like a lot of the times flashbacks kind of just serve as a method to get you more invested in the character, and it can either work in it or it doesn't. And I feel like it does actually work in this case and did give us some important story information. So that was fun. Another thing that I didn't particularly like was the Legion thing felt kind of unfortunately rushed. I feel like a lot of people were looking forward to that. And look, I played New Vegas. I'm not a huge New Vegas fan. It didn't bother me from a fan standpoint that like they didn't put a lot of focus on the Legion. This is more just from a place of like, okay, they show off that the Legion kidnaps Lucy and puts her on the cross and Macaulay Culkin shows up and that's great. And then they kind of just finish it up in like an episode and you don't see from them again or anything to do with them again until the very last episode. That felt very odd to me. Like if you're going to kind of show this new group off, these new characters, Macaulay Culkin's a huge selling point. He was all over the interviews and everything. And he basically had, I don't know, maybe a combined 15 minutes of screen time, maybe less. Sorry, there's a mosquito in my room. Motherfucker. Anyway, it felt just kind of like, hey, we got to show the Legion and make it make sense at the end. So here's this little introduction to them. I wasn't a huge fan of that. It felt very like just kind of fan servicey and didn't serve a purpose. Again, in my opinion, I mean, it just felt really weird. Like they show them in, I think the third episode, and then they kind of don't talk about it. They do mention the Legion once in a while. They're like, there's gonna be a war with the Legion and the New California Republic, and like they talk about it here and there, but it really doesn't get shown until the last episode when Macaulay Culkin ends up becoming the Caesar and marching towards New Vegas, which I guess leads us to maybe an eventual season where they're at war. And that's fine and all, but again, like, it just felt a bit, like it didn't blow me away. It didn't feel like an important story point. But I get it, I get it. It is a TV show, and I think, unfortunately, my biggest critique of this season is that it is a TV show. I know that sounds really weird, but the problem that you run into with the TV show in terms of story structure is you have to set up another season, right? So you end up with sometimes, I think we saw this in Game of Thrones. I think we saw this in, any TV show you look at that maybe went on for a little longer than it was supposed to, or, you just start to notice after a while. I for some reason was very aware of it this season of Fallout, where you go, okay, we're going to tie up a lot of these storylines, but then we don't want to write ourselves into a corner. So we have to open up new avenues for the show to continue, right? And I believe it was already renewed for a third season. So they knew like, okay, well, we have to keep this going. And I think that's going to be my biggest issue with the season. Is it very much felt like, okay, we tied up the Hank McClane story, the Lucy and her father story, and we're kind of trying to tie up the Ghoul story. But again, spoiler, he finds out where his family is, and then he opens the cryopods and they're not there. So you get another kind of like at the very end, he's in Colorado, I think, looking for them still, which just, for all this character development on Mr. House and them using New Vegas as this huge plot point and Lucy going through all this stuff and Maximus going through all this stuff, it does feel very like, what was the point then? Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? It felt like there weren't really any payoffs there. Not as much as there should have been for what they were building it up for. And it just felt a little flat in terms of, I felt like where the story was going. It felt very formulaic TV show-esque. Even the Ron Perlman super mutant that shows up, which I know a lot of people were excited about, it still feels very much like, okay, well, we got to introduce this so we can show him in the next season. And I listen, I get that. I'm not saying that doesn't make sense. I'm not saying that doesn't have a purpose. But what I'm saying is I feel like you could have went a bit of a more creative way to show off some of these things. There were a lot of times throughout the season where I saw, if I feel like if you're aware of what the show is doing in terms of, I guess, character progression or plot progression, if you're like hyper aware of that, I feel like there's something wrong with it. Again, I don't want to be seen as I'm not just shitting on it, but there were definitely some things there that I was like, I don't know, okay, like, yeah, I guess we'll see in season 3 and blah, blah. I will say I'm trying to think of other things that I didn't like, just so I can kind of get it out the way. Overall, I think that was really my biggest gripe, was that, unfortunately its biggest downfall is that it is a TV show and it does have to kind of fit these kind of building blocks of a TV show. I do also think Norm, the brother, Norm McLean's arc was a bit also kind of like, okay, I don't know. There wasn't really much that happened there. He basically gets out with all these people. He convinces them that he's a higher up in Vault Tech and that he's doing this. He gets found out that he's not a higher up in Vault Tech. Everyone dies, but the girl he likes survives conveniently. And then he basically is just like, all right, let's go look around. And then that's the last we see of him for the season. That, again, also feels a bit like, what was the point? There's a lot of things like that, I feel like, in this season where I was just kind of like, okay, well, I get that you're setting up things for the next season, but you can also make it feel important or make it feel more useful. Like his whole arc to me was honestly just like wasted. It just felt like, okay, well, I guess he's out of the vault now. He'll probably go find his sister at some point. That seems to be the plot of what we're going with here. I think that's, if I was going to give an overview, that's probably the things I didn't like. But now I'll start talking about the things that I did like. I really think they handled a lot of the visuals were really incredible. I think the CGI is getting really crazy now. I think we're getting to a time where CGI is really getting advanced enough to where sometimes I can't tell. And that's awesome. It was really cool to see them in the helicopter things flying over the desert and the big windmills at Area 51. And, there was all this like cool stuff being shown that looked really real. Until we got to the Death Claws. The Death Claws looked kind of like weird. I don't know if it was a, like a budget constraint thing. I would assume not, but they did feel a little floaty. It did kind of remind me physics wise how like the older Spider-Man movies were, where things were just a little too floaty in terms of movement. I might be sounding insane because I'm talking about a fictional creature, but the weight was off, and also the texture in comparison to the environment was off a little bit too. I don't know if anybody else felt that way. Again, that's super nitpicky, but overall, it's a really incredible looking show. There's some really cool props and really cool set pieces. And I do think there are parts of the story that I did like. Like there was a good sequence at the end with Lucy and her dad where, she basically realizes that he's not going to change and he's not going to give up any new info. And then he essentially, like, I guess, lobotomizes himself in a sense, kind of makes himself just wipes his memory. And there's this really good moment where she, I think, wants him to be good. They place this Lucy character as kind of like the optimistic person in the show. And I think you kind of saw her optimism die a little bit when her father, basically decides like, well, I've done my job and this is the only way forward. And he does mention a little thing like, oh, it's all part of the plan, and like, oh, everything has been a part of the plan. And I think that was a really good sequence that actually was quite touching in a way. Not crazy, but again, like, it was a good wrap up to their little storyline. I think it showed Lucy's character maybe going forward being a little more, I don't know, less optimistic. Because I think that was such a huge selling point for a character, is that she's kind of like painfully optimistic. And we kind of saw that like get fucked, if that makes sense. Like we saw that really take a turn towards the end. I also think the Ghouls arc was really awesome. Him falling out the window and being impaled, and him kind of fighting off this, I don't know what happens to ghouls if they're not sedated or whatever, was really nicely done. There were a lot of things I did like about it. I think on one hand, the story does suffer from that kind of typical TV show blueprint, but on the other hand, they also did do some really fun things. And there was, some funny moments in there too. And I don't know, it's a weird show. It's a really weird show because it has this terrible burden of being associated with a huge franchise that has never been adapted for something on screen. And, it's not like video game shows or movies haven't been tried before and been done very badly, like Assassin's Creed. And, The Last of Us Last of Us second season didn't do too well. But it does a really good job of trying to make something unique instead of just going like, well, all right, well, we'll just make the game in TV show form. They're trying to do something with it, and I do respect that, and I think they are doing it well. There were some really fun moments in the season. I think overall it was really good. I just think it does falter in that kind of, in the story structure, it falters a little bit. There was also a really good moment where, is it Hank? I don't know, the ghoul, Walton Goggins. He basically gives cold fusion to the wrong person. And we find out that, he fucked up. He was trying to do the right thing and he fucked up. And that's maybe why his character is so cynical. And, there were some really good explanations. And I think we did get some good character progression in terms of the core, like in terms of Lucy and the ghoul. Maximus didn't really get much. We did at least see, why the ghoul's wife was still someone he was looking for. I think in the first season, they painted her as such a bad character. And even a little earlier in the second season, they painted her as just this heartless, terrible person. But it was interesting to see her flip, and then you kind of get to care about her character a little more than before. Again, we don't really see too much of her, but we at least see that she tried to do the right thing towards the end, which I think is important if you're going to get us to care in the next season about him trying to find them, But yeah, I don't know. Overall, it's a tough one. I'm looking forward to season 3, but I do feel like they faltered a little bit in the season in comparison to the first one. But I also don't know. I'll be dead honest. Like, I don't know if that's because the first season was so new and interesting that it's tough to top it. And so the second season felt flat for me. Because if I really look at it, I mean, there was definitely a bigger scale. They explored the world more. They explored this New Vegas area more. We got some interesting character development, interesting visuals. It was overall really engaging. So I don't want to give off the impression that I didn't like it or that it was bad. It was just some things were bad, And I don't think it should overshadow how good the rest of the show was. I do think Mr. House's character was interesting too. You know, his kind of search for immortality and him basically, you know, he was basically like, hey, you should just given the cold fusion to me. I don't know why you fucked up to the ghoul character. And I don't know. I do kind of wish we maybe saw a little more about what happened to him. I know in the show, in the game, I think he's still alive. He's like in some terrible, he's like in a terrible state, but he's still alive. And we didn't really get shown anything about that other than I guess he just uploaded his consciousness into some AI thing. But yeah, you know, his character was fun, and I guess they kind of wrapped him up. I don't know if they'll go back and kind of touch that up. The character I felt the worst for was the one, like the girl congressman, who was basically wired up as a computer essentially, and they were like using her brain to control these people. That was fucked. I felt terrible for her because I think she was also trying to do the right thing by, you know, linking up the ghoul and the president to kind of figure out the cold fusion thing. I think that's a character that I was just like, oh man, that's fucking rough. She had a rough go. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to season 3. I don't think season 2 is bad by any means. I just feel like there were some missed opportunities here that I think we could have seen more of the Legion. I think while the first couple episodes where they dealt with the faction that Maximus is in, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting the name of it, but with the old dude, I think we saw a bit of the politics behind it and kind of what his, I guess, thought process was and what they were dealing with. And I guess at the end they did show the big robot that ends up showing up in the game. So I mean, it's not like that arc is dead either. They're definitely still preparing. So I think the next season will probably be a bigger scale with some more all-out war sequences mixed in with some maybe lower budget, the ghoul finding his family type of thing. I think that's probably what we'll see in the next season. And again, it's just so tough because I want it so bad to not have a TV show. I guess I don't want it to be the typical TV show format where we just every season it just feels like we're wrapping things up and starting new things. And I know that's the format, that's how it works, but it does suck in a sense because it's just kind of like, I feel like in TV shows a lot of the times they either write themselves in a corner, then force themselves to keep going, or they're constantly just stacking storylines and wrapping up along the way. And the unfortunate reality of that is that some of the storylines that you start, they're not going to feel as important as you want them to be because the endings are wrapped up a little quick, or, you know, we go, oh shit, well, we're halfway through the season. We got to wrap the storyline up from last season to start a storyline that'll last till next season. And that's what sucks for me in terms of TV shows. I think you can probably in your mind think of a lot of shows like that where, you know, we have this huge problem and it's never going to be the same. And then it gets fixed in the last episode or the first episode of the next season. And then we have a new problem. And it just is kind of like, fuck, man, like, that's cool and all, but it takes away all the importance from a main story that I think a movie format does best, right? Because you're only telling one story and you're only telling, you know, you only need it to wrap up once and you only need it to be figured out once. And that's the shitty thing about TV shows. But for a TV show, look, it's a great show. I'm not saying you shouldn't watch it. I overall enjoyed it. There were definitely some low moments, some moments I didn't care about, some moments that I thought were fun and interesting. There were definitely some good emotional moments in there, and I'm looking forward to season 3. Hopefully I've done this well. I think that's my total kind of thoughts on Fallout Season 2. I hope I was coherent. Again, 9 out of 10 is what I gave it. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't bad by any means. I hope you enjoyed this listen. Sorry again if I was kind of all over the place. I'm just kind of starting to figure out how to manage this in a way that makes sense and, you know, recall things from memory. I should probably start taking notes and things like that. I'm sure I'll get better over time, but I just wanted to try doing a TV show because I do think I want to talk about them. But obviously it's going to be a lot less frequent because I'm not going to do, you know, every episode. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, hopefully I was coherent enough and you guys enjoyed. And I'll see you guys on the next one, which I think I might be doing on another TV show, but we'll see. Yeah. Bye bye.